Ruminate and Next Core initiatives that I'm on retainer for.
Great. Nice to see everybody. And some of you I know from prior engagements. It's always good to see you, Fred. Fred was kind enough to join us on a recent GRE investor meeting, talk about what ITX is doing. It's certainly one of our great success stories that we like to talk about as we promote the region. So I think what Bruce and I talked about is
Matt, just before you get started, I am recording, and I hope that's okay with everybody. And we are going to live stream this. We've set up a YouTube, JSR YouTube channel. So we won't live stream it today, but we will download it later on for the rest of our community to be able to see. I hope that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, that's good to know. So that I will adjust my comments accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
So if we're ready to go, what we put together today is a little bit of an update on activity in the region, things that GRE is doing in partnership with others that we work with to promote the region. So I'll kind of jump into that. And if you have questions, I don't mind. And if you want to use the chat, please feel free to do that. So this is some of this you've seen before, perhaps. And so I'm trying to set the stage and then get into some things that we're seeing and kind of our plans for the future as we talk about promoting the region. And right now we use that tagline, we're a place where smart people live and smart businesses grow. Hopefully there we go. And then this is just GRE. So we were created in 2002 to support business attraction, expansion, entrepreneurship, and innovation. I guess it's worth noting that the Rochester Angel Network did originally reside at GRE. And then as Jim Sinal left to take over then High Tech Rochester, we really thought that it would make sense if the Angel Network went with him as he built out some of the funding mechanisms that they've worked on the seed level and early stage investment. We do work closely with Jim as well as Excel Partners. Even though we spend most of our time in that business expansion and attraction realm. So we promote the region to site selectors and corporate executives. Most of our advertising, if you will, is outside of the region. We have started to adjust that as something I'm sure you've all talked about before, because Rochesterians have this unique way of loving this community, but also kind of bad-mouthing ourselves as we talk about where we live, and that brings me to my snow comments. So we collaborate with just about everybody in the region, the chamber, the state, local officials. Each county has an economic development organization within the 9-county region we serve. We work closely with them. But the key is really that last point, connecting you, the corporate executive, to the right people, the right resources to expand your company here. And that can be supply chain, assets at our universities, very closely with all the universities in the area, as well as some B2B activity and finding space, workforce recruitment. We were doing a lot of connectivity on the workforce recruitment and training area before COVID. And to some degree, we're still doing some of that now as companies are still hiring, especially those essential businesses that have stayed open and are actually having some good quarters right now. The population is just over 1.2 million. That's in the 9-county region. That's significant as we look back at the qualification to even bid on the Amazon headquarter deal back in 2017. Workforce has hovered around 600,000 for a number of years. We have been relatively flat. That unemployment number is down to about down to about 11% right now. More jobs are coming back, if you will. One thing that I like to talk about when we consider the region is, as we talked about with Maximus and others, where they're hiring 1,000 to 2,000 or more people for an opportunity, we really also talk about the upstate New York high-tech corridor. So if you go from Buffalo to Albany, and we were our own state, we'd be the 26th largest state in the country. And it's also important to note the Golden Horseshoe effect, looping around to Toronto. I had a conversation with a company there this morning. There is some great synergy from Rochester to Canada, especially for those Canadian tech firms that need to enter the US market. This is kind of just that key 3-pillar effect. So economic development, traditional economic development is about business attraction, which is our key focus, as well as corporate expansion, business expansion. At least 80% of economic growth comes from within the region. I would suggest in New York State, it's probably more than that. And then a lot of focus has been put on entrepreneurship and innovation, everything, especially now with COVID, and the impact there on Main Street companies, but also those emerging tech companies looking at RIT Venture, NextCore, and others that are working in that space. This is just kind of a quick snapshot of economic development. This is how easy this is. It's a simple flow chart. Economic development is really all of this at once. Not only, it used to be, some used to call it smokestack chasing, where it was, do you have an 80-acre site? Can you line me up with state and local incentives? Can you answer these demographic questions? So I know there's a workforce, perhaps some supply chain issues. Now it's all of that at once. How quickly can I get to market? I need to mitigate risk. I want to earn money quickly, and more so now, even on the food and beverage side, and this was the case with the Mueller Quaker project, we have a new product we're launching. I'm building a new facility. I need to be able to ensure my investors that I can get up and running quickly. There's no risk. I'm going to make money and have the talent I need now and well into the future. So it is about real estate, innovation, ever more so now with that quality of place. We do promote the region as a great place to live, especially now as we look at high-tech markets, and we push this out digitally for alumni that are in those high markets now that are impacted by COVID at Boston, New York City, the DC Metro. We've got opportunity there. And then it is that business expansion, that how do we help companies through what can be a cumbersome process, understanding the different nuances of different agencies and how to engage and maximize the resources that are in the region. Like I said before, supply chain, sites, facilities, real estate, and really solving problems. These are key industry sectors, and this is also under the Finger Lakes Regional Economic Development Council, and it's worth noting that software and IT has been added to the regional council's key areas, as well as life sciences and healthcare. So we traditionally promote business expansion and attraction opportunities in what we call advanced manufacturing. That's everything from semiconductor opportunities to material science. We also have success in energy innovation. Li-Cycle recently and Greenlight Biosciences have both announced new facilities at Eastman Business Park, leveraging some of the assets there. Food and beverage manufacturing, and the fact that we have a great growing opportunity here. One of the top dairy producing counties in the United States is in Wyoming County, second best apple producing county in New York State, and one of the top in the country is in Wayne County. Life sciences, traditionally in that medical device setting, but also some of the things that are coming out of the University of Rochester, especially in response to COVID. OrthoClinical, for example, their new antibody test came out of Rochester's R&D efforts. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and we've actually seen that pick up in the past few months. Optics, photonics, and imaging, software, information technology, and one of the key points there, especially regarding the Luminate, if you've attended any of the Luminate events, you see where life science, medical device, optics, photonics, and imaging, and software and data analytics and IT are kind of merging as they support the innovation that's really driving kind of the future of individualized care, whether it be medical device, as well as some of the pharma-related opportunities that you see coming out of the U of R and others. So these are some of the accolades that we promote when we talk about the region. Again, that 7th best city to live in the United States after, I would say, right now, regarding the pandemic. And yes, we're #1 in the Northeast. That just came out. #1 market from CBRE's Labor Analytics Division for cybersecurity hiring opportunities. We're also #3 for Python skills, which go beyond the software world to that B2B, even fintech opportunities. Companies like M&T who are building out a tech center in Buffalo, they're going to depend on that talent. And we even talk about the opportunities to work with Buffalo and across the high-tech corridor to help those companies grow, as it really supports not just our region, but all of upstate in that environment. And we've seen this before from the Atlantic, 7th brainiest city, one of the hotbeds for real estate, which is significant when you talk about home ownership and the opportunity to have a great house and a great quality of life. 5th best for families, best performing cities in 2018 for economic growth. That vibrant arts community, something we know very well, but again, you get to the arts and it's not just about STEM, but also STEAM, that creativity. Optimax is noted for hiring guitar players, for example, not only on the dexterity, but the creativity they see because they add technology talent to their growing firm. One of the coziest cities, it's one of my favorites. Brookings is always ranking us high for innovation. And yes, we're the safest weather city in the Northeast US. For some reason, our weather forecasters like to try to make a windstorm into a tornado. I'm not sure why. Japanese companies really don't like tornadoes very much. But we do actually promote the fact that we have no downtime. We did have a South Korean manufacturer who was evaluating sites in upstate New York, and it was worth noting that they kept talking about snow. And as we toured them and connected with local firms that were doing business in the area, we could relay with people who have been here for more than 30 years working here that we don't shut down. So we may get a dusting of snow from time to time, but it's fresh water. It melts. It creates an unlimited supply of fresh water that food and beverage companies and semiconductor manufacturers need. It's cheap, plentiful. We've got the infrastructure to handle it. And certainly, I know from the business we do, our competing metropolitan areas in Texas and even more so in the Carolinas now in Georgia, they would love to have the water that we have. And there are going to be issues in those communities in the future, and certainly it's important to our industries, not just the availability, but the cost. And again, we're the #1 market for patents per workers. We're smart, and we can really back all of that up. So I did want to kind of reiterate, we've had some good wins. 2020 started very well for us. Calero Software announced an expansion here in the region. Recently, Arcadis, a new company to the region, is going to be occupying space in the building that we happen to be in, supported by Benderson Development here at 5-Star. Cloud Checker announced a major expansion, 497 new jobs, key AWS partner. That will be moving forward, perhaps a little more slowly now with some of the issues related to COVID. But Greenlight, as I mentioned before, Lycycle, Vigneri Chocolate is also doing work here. ProAmpac announced a new innovation center, $8 million, 30 new jobs. We beat Ohio for that. Mastodon Design is also adding several hundred people here in Rochester. Framing Tech just announced an expansion, as well as Expressway Cinema. All of those were announced as $70 million investments, 900 new jobs, and 529 jobs retained. And it is important to retain those jobs, but that growth has been significant. And we still anticipate that moving forward, albeit a little more slowly now due to the impact of really what's happened with COVID across the world. We are still busy. So as we finish the second quarter, we've had over 50 active projects. So a project for us is where we're providing demographic information, real estate, connectivity to local assets, can be supply chain opportunities, additional space for an expanding company. About 2/3 of these projects are companies that are in the region looking to expand, which is actually good as we look at companies that not only are surviving COVID, but in some cases having good growth as a result of the products and services they provide in some cases throughout the world. Almost at $1 billion of total investment should all of those projects come to fruition. I will note that they're all very competitive. Over 3,800 new jobs and retaining almost 2,000 new jobs. And importantly, we've opened 21 projects, and at least half of those are COVID related, where we saw some opportunities early as companies were innovating in the area. We had some inquiring companies from outside of the region that needed an FDA approved partner, perhaps a clean room, someone with key experience in medical device testing and some other efforts to help them get to market quickly. And we've made some B2B connections both inside the region as well as getting a better understanding of what some key corporate partners are doing here in the region so that we can leverage that. We push that out to several people so that we could work with site selectors and help companies connect to Rochester-based firms who could get to market quickly and have a good B2B opportunity. We did close 22 projects. We had 5 wins, 2 losses. Both of those losses were examples of companies that were in another competing metropolitan area that decided to expand where they were currently at, which is kind of typical. We had 15 projects canceled, and again, that ratio is, again, pretty typical. 4 of those were due to COVID. We have seen a slowdown on the tech side with software IT, those typical office-based opportunities, and that's largely due to the fact that a lot of companies, especially in the software realm, fintech and so forth, have gone remote, so the real estate difficulties are not as pronounced as they once were. We do anticipate announcing about 13 wins that would be about $126 million in new investment, 700 new jobs, and about 538 jobs retained. And again, this is the tricky part. We don't control the timing of that. So as these companies are engaged in different markets, they may be advanced manufacturers, food and beverage, software, IT, business services, and a few others. It's really dependent on what's going on, not just in the US economy, but globally, and where their customers and how their financing is coming along. Some of our hot prospects are Project Zeta. You will notice that this is kind of the difficulty of talking about what's going on at GRE. We're under several non-disclosure arrangements right now with these firms. This is highly confidential, so you won't recognize any firm names here. Project Zeta is an advanced manufacturer, again, in that energy innovation space, $86 million investment, 350 new jobs, very competitive with Ohio. They have actually been here, feet on the street, even during COVID, so we've adjusted what we're doing, being socially distant, wearing masks, and accommodating good relationships with those business prospects as they look at facilities in the region. Imperium is another advanced manufacturer, a significant capital investment, $130 million of investment, very competitive with Nevada and Canada, 100 new jobs. Project Maple, an advanced manufacturer, 80 new jobs, retaining 20, competitive with Arizona. Project Key, which is a food and beverage manufacturer. This is a business attraction project, $28 million of investment, 50 new jobs to start, again, competitive with Ohio. Goblin is a business services firm, $47 million of investment, 93 new jobs, 59 retained, competitive again with Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Ohio. And Project Maple Leaf, we seem to have run into a lot of maples lately. Advanced manufacturer, $52 million, 100 new jobs, and again, this is an attraction opportunity that is leveraging some of the assets and certainly the smart people that we have here in the optics, photonics, and imaging space. One of the other things that we've worked on since 2012 is economic gardening. So economic gardening is focused on what we call second stage companies. It was a program created by Chris Gibbons in Littleton, Colorado, supported by the Edward Lowe Foundation, and now under the National Center for Economic Gardening, again run out of Colorado by Chris Gibbons. We've worked with 191 companies since 2012, and we work with National Center experts to provide strategic information such as sales leads, search engine optimization, geographic mapping of customers and competitors, and helping companies leverage and grow revenue. Privately held firms that are in tradable sectors with products and services being sold outside of the region, $1 to $50 million in revenue, 10 to 99 employees. And the critical part is these companies account for about 11% of the firms in a typical metropolitan statistical area, which Rochester is one. But more importantly, they account for about 36% of the jobs. And typically, these may not be some of the typical tech transfer firms that, and the emphasis in Startup New York and other things that you hear about, but they're here, they're solid, they've got revenue, they're growing, they're committed to the area. So we've focused on them since 2012, securing some foundational support as well as even some state funding to serve these companies since then. Recently, our 2019 cohort, 13 of those firms were ranked in the privately held top 100. You'll notice Eagle Dream, Optimax was listed there. They are a little bigger than that 99 employee count, but we've worked with them. Capstone IT, Bristol ID, eHealth Technologies has grown, Handtech, some very, very good firms. And it's interesting to note too that Chris runs this program throughout the country, and the feedback that we get on local firms and the innovation and the push they have on the service providers engaged with the National Center is outstanding. And again, we do have great innovators and entrepreneurs in this community, and it's reflected when we have those national conversations. The other thing that we're doing is we've leveraged a Google grant, and we've actually picked up a lot of activity on our Google grant, even during COVID, launching some podcasts. We're promoting the fact that we are a leader in patents, that we're smart, from cancer preventing vaccines to touch screens and so many other technologies. And that's really been done on a digital basis now, especially as the economy has slowed down throughout the world. We did push out a lot of the game-changing, innovative technologies that have come out during the COVID experience, Thermo Fisher Scientific, Ortho-Clinical Diagnostics, IDEC Health and Science, as well as the University of Rochester, RIT's push on some approaches to solving some of the ventilator concerns. And we've had some good success engaging corporate site selectors and other medical device experts and keeping them informed of what's going on in the region in that space. I think there's going to be some good opportunity there, not just now, but as supply chains come back, certainly from Asia and perhaps from the UK, and we get those opportunities to bring some of those firms back to the US, Rochester is ideally suited to do that. CB, again, this is a little more detail on that #1 for cybersecurity talent. fueled by Rochester Institute of Technology, as well as some of our other colleges and universities, not just in our region, but also going to UB, Cornell, Syracuse. The fact that we are an hour from Buffalo and Syracuse bodes well for us on that labor market supply, and we promote that fact. And again, we are the lucky number 7, best city to live after a pandemic. And we are pushing a Back to Real, a Back to Rochester campaign. And we are focused digitally on sending that information to not just RIT and U of R alums who are in those major metros with high costs and perhaps now safety concerns because of COVID, reminding them that it's okay to come back and secure positions at some of the firms that are hiring here. L3 Harris is of note, as well as Optimax, HP Hood, IEC Electronics is also hiring and expanding. And again, we've showcased some of that medical device expertise, the fact that we've got FDA approved contract manufacturers that are open to business opportunities. We did put out an email marketing and calling campaign to over 700 individuals. We had a good opening rate on that. And that's just one of the things that we've been pushing out. And we do promote the fact that we've really adjusted from that idea of being a low-cost place of doing business to focusing more on profits, especially in the emergence of COVID and coming out of what will be a great business opportunity once we get past this and get a handle on the infection rate and providing service to people who are infected. But it is that profitability, not just revenue, but we can prove the point that you can make profits of $1 million a year more for a 50-person firm in Rochester than you can in Boston, New York City, DC, and San Francisco. And we are mining data now and identifying targets in those markets. The difficulty is just the nuances right now of engaging people at some of these firms that are good prospects for us, and the fact that in some cases they're looking to survive or stay ahead of their own markets and deal with the outbreak they have in their community before they entertain the idea of opening a new office, if you will, here in Rochester. So, but we are having those conversations and doing the homework to identify those targets. And then this gets to another thing that Bruce and I have talked about. You may be familiar with ROC 2025. Boston Consulting Group was brought in the fall of 2018 to help update the Finger Lakes Regional Economic Development Plan, as well as work with the Chamber, GRE, Rochester Downtown Development Corp, and our economic development partners in the county and the city, to really talk about, so how can we do better? And that was primarily from the private sector led efforts. So how do we maximize our impact? And one of the things that came out of that was this regional connectivity. Actually, something we've talked about at GRE for a long time is how do we take some of those key message points, our patents per worker, the fact that we're #1 for STEM degrees in a community of 1 million or more residents, and how we stack up on that quality of life, and get all of our partners to promote some of those facts, even in ways that work for them. Visit Rochester is part of this initiative as well, and even though they focus on tourism and businesses in the tourism hospitality industry, the fact that CEOs and executives who are making decisions visit this region and the Finger Lakes is important, and we do want to relay some of that economic information so that they come back. They understand who's doing business here and why. We want to promote the successes of companies that are in this region, and we're coming together as the Chamber, Downtown Development Corp, City, County, and as well as all 9 county economic development agencies in this region to tell that story and be more effective in that regard. And that's something Bruce and I have talked about. And some of the assets that we have here at GRE, we've got a good partnership with iHeartMedia, with 13 Wham. We also have a segment with WROC TV that's provided to us as a great support. Perhaps you've seen it on Wednesday morning, called Why Rock? Why are you here? Why are you growing? It's a short segment. We like to highlight not only companies we brought to the region and help expand, but also firms that are here, whether they're engaged with GRE or not. We want to tell that story. And oftentimes we have that Midwestern mentality in this community where we've got some outstanding, innovative companies, and they really don't broadcast their story, and we want to help them do that in a way that's good for them and for the region. So with that, I will stop talking at you. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. But again, much of what I have, just about all of it, is available at our website, which is rochesterbiz.com. I'm very interested in the work that you're doing with Jumpstart Rochester. I also have met with Jonathan Gruber. It's worth noting that he's given me a couple leads. So he's a believer, and We appreciate that fact. We've talked to some firms as he's suggested that they should do business here in Rochester, which I greatly appreciate. And frankly, we would love more people to do that. Connect us, be a rainmaker and ambassador for the region, and help tell the story, whether it's your business or somebody else's, and the good things that are going on here.
Great, Matt. Really appreciate that. That was a really great catch up. We could have saved a lot of time in the last 2 weeks if I had just said, why don't you just tell me everything I need to know. That was terrific. A couple of things you mentioned, I just want to, we can think a little bit more about how do we integrate this. So one of the initiatives that we have been working on, our idea about jumpstarting is not so much to create another organization, but how do we create a process that adds to all the things that are already going on? What can we do to support? So one of our questions that comes up for our group and our community is what else can we do to support the efforts that you know are going on? One of them was you just highlighted here at the end. And so we have partnered with Zach Ellis in their story. And Zach and I and several others have been working on an initiative where we would just start interviewing CEOs to get them to tell their story, and we have a process and methodology for that. So tapping into your sources, tapping into the right places where we can do more of that very much fits into what we perceive as something we could be doing.
Yeah.
The second thing,
I would also love part of the Greater Rock effort. And they call it regional branding, but it's also even as simply as creating a hashtag that everyone can use. Part of that effort and the thought behind that is to really have a grassroots effort. So rather than come up with a slogan for the region, we really want that to come from the community and to be validated by people of ideally every background in the community. So part of what you're doing, I would love to connect to the work that we're doing on that branding effort, because that's part of the story from the CEO level, as well as from the talented people we have in the region. Why do they live here? What do they enjoy about the community? And to some degree, it kind of goes back to the point I said before, is that, keeping people up to date with what's going on in their own community, as many don't know. So I'd love to find a way to plug you into that.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, that's part of our mission, and we've had discussing it with ourselves. Sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing so much in the organization. And I've had the privilege of talking to everybody in this group and almost everybody in the Jumpstart community, and everybody has a wonderful story. Every one of those stories is unique and very personal. And to your point, perking that up and getting as many of those would be helpful. The second piece, you mentioned Jonathan Gruber, and my involvement in this was totally by synchronicity or serendipity. I run into Gruber at MIT, right? And so, but he is a big advocate for our community, and a couple of weeks ago, he did send me a copy of the bill that was introduced in the Senate, which has bipartisan support, which he apparently drafted, which I don't know whether that's public or not. But it's called the Endless Frontier Act, and it's to create a new directorship, if you will, at the National Science and Technology Foundation, and to create a contest, if you will, or competition between areas and cities for up to $100 billion over a period of 5 years. So that methodology is all there. It's all been kind of in the background. Matt, you probably knew that. Maybe you knew this, maybe you didn't. But apparently it has bipartisan support. And to our conversation, it was, even if we don't get that competition, we're already winning that competition. You're already doing that. And so what else and how else could we support that effort? So I'll leave that kind of up to you. But that was kind of where we ended up our conversation last week.
Yeah, just on that point too, we were aware of that. We actually talked with Schumer staff about that. Joe Morelli, we've had a similar conversation with him. What goes through Congress right now is kind of anybody's guess, as they, that's always an interesting news segment. But I think, you know, we're hopeful, regardless of whether it ends up being 100 billion or 2 billion, and we get an opportunity for any piece of that. I think we are well suited for that. We've had a lot of success when you look at AIM Photonics, as well as our photonics industry and Americom and some of their past success in that space. And some smaller initiatives too. I know NextCore has applied for some funding related to a software development hub to support and the software cluster, if you will, that is growing here. And certainly the work at RIT and Univar will be part of that. But I think we are well positioned, and we'll circle the wagons. The hard part is getting an understanding of what that RFP will actually look like. And this happened in the Wired initiative back in 2006. There was we did know that was coming, but as you respond to those efforts, you do need to follow their request. And even going back to the AIM Photonics initiative and responding there, pulling that partnership together with state resources. So we will be happy to engage on that. The key is what will that finally look like? Should it be approved and secure a signature out of the White House? So. But like I said before, we think we already are that innovation hub. We talk about the Jumpstart book and the fact that we've got many companies building on some of those innovations now, and we're ideally suited for the future. I don't know do you want to go through the questions, or how do you want to handle?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. Let me turn it over. I asked Joel and to Barb to keep an idea in the chat room. So Joel, can I go to you, and can you come up with any of the questions or some themes or ideas?
Yeah, I think first I'll ask a very simple question of my own. Matt, do you have the chat board in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. So this is, you can see that Gary asked the first question, and it's an origin question. Just curious about how the GRE was established and what the groups were that initially were stakeholders.
Yeah, my understanding was in 2001 or so, there were some high net worth individuals. Larry Peckham was one, Christine Whitman, and now I'm going to leave somebody out, and a couple other folks were, basically saw that companies were making expansion announcements in other cities. And I'll pick on Cleveland just because it's easy, or even Buffalo, and say, why are those companies expanding there and not in Rochester? We have everything and more that they need. And they hired a firm to do an analysis, and at that time came to the conclusion that each county had an economic development agency, if you will, but there was not a regional organization that was marketing the region and responding to, I'll call them site selector requests from a Deloitte or Grubb Ellis or Ernst & Young, so forth. And when you don't respond to those initiatives, you get taken off the list. And so that the idea of creating a regional entity that would market the entire region and also be able to respond at a moment's notice to those requests, as well as support business attraction. I've got the original GRE analysis if you want to see it in the plan. So the organization was created by those folks and others with private sector investment back in 2002, and has really been running since that point in time. Our first big win was Barilla in Avon, opened in 2007, and then in 2008 or 9 we announced the Cody Gate Venture win at Eastman Business Park. And we've really picked up activity since then to the point where, again, those 13 wins this year, we had 33 wins last year, one of our best years ever. So I'd like to think that we've refined our approach and we've learned. The interesting point is, back when GRE was created, you used to have time to write a proposal, put 3 rings binders together, and FedEx them or mail them back to a company. Now we get requests from a Deloitte, and you need you have a 24-hour response time, maybe 36. And you have to provide detailed demographic information, sites, facilities, overview on incentives, supply chain, business addition and subtractions in the region, and what sometimes can be a 70-page RFI in that point in time. And the site selectors that are hired by these firms will tell you, we do that on purpose because we don't want to deal with communities that don't have their act together. So it is about, data. Bruce and I also talked about some data. We do have a warehouse of research information. It's very important to understand that every approach, every response is tailored to that company's request, whether it be in the format or the industry sector, or even what we add to the prospect to help them better understand our market. One of the conversations we've had with the CBRE Labor Analytics Group is the fact that they typically, especially in tech, they put a dot on a map, a pin on a map, and draw a 30-mile radius and tell the firm that's where your workforce will come from, which does work in a community like Northern Virginia. Now in Rochester, we know that that workforce draws well beyond that 30-mile radius. So we bring those folks to the region so that they can understand, you know, it's a minute a mile here. So you have people working in downtown Rochester that are well beyond that 30-mile radius. And that's okay. You can draw from those people. We had, for example, and even for Barilla and Avon, they had 1,200 applicants for the first 200 jobs. So we do have a great labor pool here, but the analytical component and the analysis goes beyond that. And that's actually the conversation we had with Maximus when they announced the 2,000 jobs at Rochester Tech Park. But it's that relationship building that gets you the opportunity to have that conversation, which is why we work so hard and frankly, meeting people face to face, building that relationship. What keeps you up at night? Yes, it is a little bit of a marketing and sales approach, but it's more important to listen and understand what's your initiative, what's your innovation, who are you trying to beat to market, and then what assets we have to help you solve that problem.
Matt, thanks. It makes a great argument for collaboration if prospective companies are looking for a turnaround that's that quick. Let me ask one more, and then I'll turn it back to you, Bruce. Zach had a couple of definitional questions. He wanted to know a little bit more of what a job retained means, and also what you mean.
So a job retained is an example of companies that, let's say they've got 110 people who are in the region. Well, actually, I'll give you a perfect example. American Packaging was a deal that was announced, I think, in 2017, very competitive with the state of Iowa, and they were moving to flexographic packaging. They had 170 people on Driving Park in Rochester. The opportunity was to hire to make about a $260 million investment, 292 new jobs either here or in Iowa. So, and the fact of that project was, as you consider their future, should that project go to Iowa, eventually there would be a drawdown because of the future of the technology on that Rochester workforce. So it is the 170, retaining those 170 jobs is kind of how you look at it, or that would be impacted. The capital investment usually evolves around either building a new building or building improvements, equipment, furniture, fixtures, hard assets, if you will, invested by the company.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep.
Bruce, do you want me to keep going, or perhaps?
No, I was going to ask Barb. Barb, you had one, and maybe we can let you jump in here. Got to unmute. You've got to get unmuted.
Got it. Yeah, I know I did damn unmute thing. Sorry, guys. So I did have a question. What the heck what did I write down here? So Matt, what do you think, or can you help us understand what are the next steps? You know, a big aspect about jumpstarting America is collaboration, right?
Right.
So I think we're seeing some better synergies across the region, but what specifically are our next step? And I think to this point, I'm going to just combine this question a little bit. You talk about a lot of advanced manufacturing coming into the region. We've got some workforce development that needs to go on for advanced manufacturing. You know, how are we going to, get the right people, get more people, I should say, at the table to make this happen faster?
Well, first, one of the things I also want to touch on, which is very important, is our ability to connect. Certainly, GRE has 35 board level investors, about 90 total investors. We're privately funded. We do get some marketing funds from our local economic development partners. That is critical. The other component, the reason I mention that, is the ability to have conversations with local companies has become ever more critical. We had a request for a project called Sunbeam. There was 100 software-related jobs. And as they do labor analytics now, there's a lot of information on the web, so they can tell, they in some cases know the degrees, as well as some using various databases, what our current workforce attributes are. But what they asked us to do, and they actually gave us a little more time, which thankfully they gave us a week on this, but they wanted to understand not only, okay, so give us your software companies, but we also want to know what technologies they're using, who's writing code, who has software architecture skills within the firm, and you can only get that by engaging local companies. That was also the case with one of the COVID medical device related opportunities that we had. So that took, in the case of Sunbeam and this other project on the medical device side, that took 4 or 5 people from our shop calling companies throughout the region to understand, do you have FDA approved space? Would you be willing to enter a partnership on a testing kit? What capabilities do you have equipment available? Would you entertain an NDA? And that takes real collaboration. So that's one piece of it. And then on the workforce side, we are, and I think especially with the discussions about equity and social justice, very, very important as we look at the unemployment rates in the community and the fact that many folks who are employed at firms who might not be able to come back online, certainly not right away. How do we help individuals that have been impacted by COVID or poverty or other situations get to the Forward Center that's being built at MCC with Todd Oldham and the outstanding work he's doing in mechatronics? It's one of the reasons why OFD Foods came here. This mechatronics program is outstanding. How do we get people from the workforce development system and the supports that they need through those programs so that they can entertain positions that are available now? Frankly, HP Hood is hiring. Some of the L3 Harris opportunities are technician level jobs. Optimax is hiring. McAlpin Industries is hiring. So how do we get people and adjust those systems? That's some of the conversations we're having now, kind of behind closed doors, if you will, is to align. And if something's not working within those systems, we have to fix it. And that takes honest feedback and adjustments, as well as something we talked about in our office this morning. There can be multiple approaches to things like software boot camps. Some people will go through a 4-year degree program at RIT. Others may take a 2-year software program that can line them up for that through MCC. Todd Oldham is willing to adjust this program. And then there's other boot camp related opportunities of programs like Catalyte that can take a person, put them through an intense assessment outside of a traditional school setting and give them the software coding skills that they need to leverage some of the opportunities that are available. So it's really all of those approaches, but the big piece is knowing who's doing what to whom and aligning those systems. It's not easy. There's a lot of communication.
Well, because I think that's the piece that I'm hearing, and I don't want to. Well, I'll meet with you separately. Is that there's a huge need, and there's people who want to go through the exercise of upskilling, and to get that bridge gapped. We had systemic issues here in town and across the region, New York State, quite frankly, that we have to attend to, or this economic development thing is not going to move as quickly as we could. So I'll meet with you separately on that.
Yeah, and that is also under the ROC 2025 initiative, especially on the talent side, where, to quote Darren Bulow from Deloitte, we're in a war for talent, and a community must demonstrate the current pipeline, the ability to train people as well as to recruit people to a region, which it really is all. And as we have higher unemployment rates right now, that will not last. And as we get back to a tighter labor market, we do have to show that we can upgrade people's skills, that we have a system on that pipeline, which is why solving the city school district problem is also paramount for the community itself, and the ability to recruit people back here. So it's part of that quality of life, but people also want to know, not only is there one job for me, but there are multiple jobs. And frankly, we also need our companies to do a better job of telling their story, which is, I chuckle because earlier at GRE, we visited a firm that's doing some really cool things here in this community. And until they had some recruitment challenges, you wouldn't know they exist. So it is about telling that story. Why do I want to work for you? And brag about yourself a little bit. We don't really do that. And the fact that, yes, we're in Rochester, it snows, big deal. I can get anywhere in a minute. I can be in a Finger Lakes in maybe 30, or depending on if I exaggerate the speed limit, or one of the outstanding on the Great Lakes. And we've got a lot going for us, and we sell ourselves short. And that goes, it's that we kind of joked about this during Amazon. I had a lot of friends during the Amazon headquarter pitch that were texting me, telling me, we're never going to win that deal. We have everything they need at a much lower rate. than what they were looking at in New York City and other markets. We have everything they need to drive their innovation. And frankly, the feedback we got from our proposal was outstanding. Keep us informed. That's what they told us. Really cool place. Keep us up to date. Make sure that we know about that. Very impressed. Our entire team was impressed. Had no idea. And that's what you often hear about Rochester. Even we've entertained people who left here a while ago and are now running firms in other places and have come back to us, and they have no idea what's going on in this community and what they thought was going on here. We have this challenge too with even in local media circles. There's a lack of understanding of the outstanding talent, innovation, and even on the supply chain components. Companies like Apple, Amazon depend on companies in Rochester already. Not to mention NASA.
Thanks, Matt.
Matt, thank you very much.
You could tell I'm a little passionate about this. So
Yeah, so as are all of us. Really appreciate it. I think I want to be respectful of your time. There are a couple more questions in the chat box. One of them.
I'll keep going. That's fine. I don't have a hard stop.
Okay,
so happy to chat.
One of them relates to venture capital, and your role in that, our role in that, and certainly Gruber. You mentioned because of Rochester being #1, people contact Gruber, and Gruber's now sending those people over the wall to resource people in Rochester. One of those is in the venture capital area. Are you involved in that, or what's going on?
Yeah, a little bit in the sense that, and we have a couple firms right now that need early stage investments. So we work with our partners, and that's always been one of the great conversations in Rochester. Are there not enough deals, or is there not enough money? The people with money sometimes say there's not enough good deals. The people who have the deals sometimes say there's not enough resources. I think the truth has ebbed and flowed over time and is somewhere in between. We do see more investments in that early stage category. And again, this is from our side. I'm not directly involved in some of these conversations, but it more so the approach. And we've seen Impellant Ventures create a fund recently. We've got the Finger Lakes Technology Fund. There's a partnership also with another investment fund with Excel Partners. There's some of that is governmental, but some of that is private. And most are fully subscribed. There is a better connectivity with firms like Keuka Ventures, Launch New York, NextCore, the Rochester Angels. But certainly there could be more, especially in that follow-along category when you get to 3 to 5 million, and that that next go-to-market round, especially on the commercialization side of the business, if you will. So
yeah, Dave Brown from Impellant is a member of our group, and he's actually going to come and speak to us 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, and I know David, and we've sent some deals his way, and that's usually the role we play, where we've got folks who are looking for investment, trying to understand what their need is and connect them to the right people, and ideally get them funded, but then also help them expand in the role that we play in the system.
The other question that comes up for us is in the healthcare space, and maybe this is too big for today's conversation, but maybe if you might address that, what's your kind of view about how do we get all the various resources in the community around healthcare and all the healthcare aspects?
Yeah, well, and that's a question Bruce and I shared electronically, and my first response was, what do you mean by healthcare? So, and this, it's similar to the conversation around optics, photonics, and imaging, because when you look at things as industry sectors, NAICS codes, and the statistical analysis, is healthcare means a lot of things to a lot of different things to a lot of different people. There are the traditional human care side with our healthcare systems, U of R, Rochester Regional Health, the doctors, and then there's the supply chain to that, the data analytics component, medical record keeping, the technology on medical device, and it's understanding, as well as the IT software side that comes into that, and some of the innovative firms coming through things like Luminate. So we actually think we sit very well for not just the traditional approach to healthcare and the translational science efforts going on at the University of Rochester, going from research to patient care, but also the research on COVID-related opportunities, even the fact that Xerox, for example, making ventilators at their campus in Webster is significant, orthoclinical diagnostics. So how do you leverage that big company connectivity, as well as that startup environment, for what could be a software opportunity, as well as direct patient care. Visual DX comes to mind, and help those companies get funded, grow here, and connect so that they can do the things that they need to do to serve patients. The other interesting component to healthcare that people typically forget is our connectivity to Cornell, and we have seen success with firms in the past where you might not be able to go to human trial as quickly and get FDA approvals, but some of those technologies lend themselves to animal or may have a synergy with animal science, and that's where Cornell can be leveraged for some of that to help you test and get to market quickly and build on that ecosystem. But the analysis of it and our role in it, if you will, we probably have a sidebar conversation as to what you mean by that and how we emphasize a firm's ability to innovate and grow here in Rochester in that industry segment.
Now, we'd love to engage you in that conversation. Obviously, Gruber has a background in all of this, and our conversations with him was how important it was not covered in his book, but it is an important component, and particularly in a city like Rochester, but in all communities. And
yeah,
so
well, and it is worth noting, and I see a question related to that. So in the original Finger Lakes Regional Economic Development Plan and the Upstate Revitalization Initiative, the $500 million win that we had through the state of New York, software and healthcare were not explicitly called out, even though we work in that space on the expansion and attraction side. The region has now added that to a focus. Now, the regional council process and its state funding has kind of been slowed down due to COVID and the impact on the state budget. But be that as it may, there is a working group around healthcare and healthcare innovation under the regional council effort. And folks from University of Rochester, I believe MedTech as an association, as well as some of our firms in the area, and Rochester Regional Health are engaged in that effort. And sometimes initiatives, while there's a group meeting, there are a lot of initiatives beyond, outside of that group.
So whatever you can do to help us get connected into that, or that would be wonderful, because we have a very strong group that's really interested in making some real progress in that area.
Okay, that's actually one of the challenges of collaboration, is keeping up with what everybody's doing.
Exactly. And the other thing that came up, when you lose, are there common denominators, commonalities to when you lose somebody coming to the country, to our community? Are there any common denominators for that?
To a degree, when it comes to building a new facility in upstate New York, and this is not unique to our region, other communities have made significant investments in what we call shovel readiness. So OFD Foods is an example of a project we won in this space, but the state of Wisconsin was offering what we call a shovel-ready site, which means utilities are at the edge of the site. They have capacity for water, sewer, power, natural gas. In some cases, communities have gotten more aggressive, where not only is the phase 1 environmental been completed, but you have all the government approvals so that you can come in and build right then and there, say in 30 days or less. The state of Georgia beat us for a photovoltaic opportunity called Project Eagle, which was Hanwha Kyuseo, for an assembly plant, by providing what they call a pad-ready site, which means that it is flat, level, ready to build. Georgia Power will give you the substation. And that it started off as a $40 million investment, 100 new jobs. They've already gone to 250 jobs and doubled the investment. And that's the competitive nature of this business. And it is all about timeline. There is a story in site selector lore that goes that the VW plant, when the consultants visited Chattanooga, Tennessee, when they looked at the 1,300 acre site, the feedback was, well, I can't envision what this could look like here, because you've got some trees, you've got some rolling, not quite hills, but rolling. It's not flat. When they came back in 2 weeks, the pad was flat, trees removed, squared off, with utilities at the site. So that's when the executives looked at the officials and said, "Oh, you're serious." And that's what you're up against. It's about time to market, eliminating risk, reducing cost, and being able to meet a business's needs. And it goes to the point about talent, but also infrastructure, utilities, all of that. And we talked with BCG about this. It is the ability to execute. Being able to execute and deliver on promise is paramount in anything that we entertain. And not just on building a site, but also office space, renovation, and all of the components around a company, engaging the various systems. And that's the role that we play, is trying to make sure all of those things work seamlessly and meet the company's needs.
And do you feel we're making good progress on that, Matt, as far as the sense of urgency as a community?
I think so, yeah. I think we see our volume of activity and our wins have picked up. I mean, I'm always running for perfection, so I'd always like to do better. And I think we've gotten better at that. And it is also knowing what your assets are and where we can play. There are some cases where we're not going to beat Texas on a low-cost assembly opportunity, where it's really running down to that lowest possible wage rate, lease rate. It's really that innovation, solving the world's future problems, current and future problems, where Rochester bodes very well for itself. And on the food and beverage side, people want products, fresh products. We are a one-day truck drive from 128 million customers. We have fresh water and so many other assets, and that's becoming more and more critical to some of the major markets on the East Coast. Certainly, that's why Barilla's second plant was located on the East Coast. But that ability to get to market quickly, and the innovation that's in the food and beverage space, the fact that we've got Constellation here, some outstanding packaging firms, American Packaging, ProAmpac, RIT Packaging Science, so Sustainability Institute, Wegmans certainly, it really bodes well for us. And we have an ecosystem, and we've had site selectors on the ground, and they've given that feedback after 2 days here in the region, touring, talking to companies that are here growing, like Ledestri Food and Drink, and others. You can see what's going on. It's very important to try to get people here to understand beyond the data the way this community does operate and can operate and solve problems.
Matt, do you get any pushback from the poverty and the city issues?
In what way?
Well, I mean, we're number 3 or number 4 in the country in our inner city poverty in our school system. And does that come up in your work and your efforts?
Well, it does, but I think urban America in general, each city, whether large or small, has similar issues that they're wrestling with. And then you can get down into the statistics, but we try to focus on what does the company need to grow and be successful. The other thing that we try to point to, and excuse me, we did this with a site selector who was here from Newmark, is highlight our successes. East High School, for example, I can tell you 3 optics firms that hire directly out of East High School's optics program.
Yeah, and as you know, I work with Optimax, and we were very instrumental in working on that program.
So there are examples of outstanding success there, and depending on the industry segment you're talking about, some of our connectivity with our high schools. We also have some of the best public high schools in the country here in Rochester, and that I'll say ecosystem, if you will, I think that gives us an opportunity to solve those problems. Now, are we there yet? No, but we do have the skills and capabilities, I think, to make a big impact there. And it's hopefully coming to collaboratively around some efforts to resolve that problem, to help give those kids an opportunity for success in the companies that are here growing now.
And I really appreciate your time and energy. We're kind of losing it. We're losing people here, and I want to be respectful of your time and their time.
Sure.
Anything that you haven't talked about? What last thing you want to leave with us? Anything particularly about what we could do to help your efforts?
Yeah, I really think the simplest thing, and it does sound simple, but it is being positive. It's how I used to close out my interviews on the Amazon project. You know, we have a lot to be grateful for in this community. The ability to connect here among business leaders is something other regions don't have. When we did the Cody Gate deal, it was interesting. One of our someone asked the managing director from Menlo, California, why are you here? If you're in California, why aren't you doing this there? He said, do you have any idea the experts I've connected to? These guys have had me here for 2 days. I've talked to 20 people that can help me solve my problems. I can't get that connectivity in California. One of their companies signed a prototype agreement with Arn Prior in a day. We're connected to U of R in a matter of hours. And that's our ability to connect and solve problems. Matt Frank talks about this. He ran the GM fuel cell facility. He's still involved in energy innovation, still lives here. And he's talked with people who are growing innovative companies. And yes, you could do that research somewhere else. We've got people here that can get you to market and help you make money. So what's more important to you?
Is that the tagline you ended up with on your tagline? We solve problems here.
Well, it's one of them, but we're, you know, it's about smart people, and we do talk about that, the ability to get to market, solve problems, and we like to focus on that. And it really is getting to market quickly. So, you know, that's my biggest thing is just if you know a good company and you want to help us tell that story, please let us know. We're always looking to remind our own community, and it is important to know that, especially site selectors, they monitor what other firms are doing and why. So that's what we try to tell the world. IDEX is growing here. Why is that? L3 Harris and so many others, Ortho Clinical, that research came out of Rochester. Why are they here doing that? And there is a reason. So that's what we want to tell and remind ourselves to a large degree, but also tell the world what's going on here in Rochester.
Matt, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all the work you're doing here in our community.
Thank you.
And we'll help. We're going to continue to try to help in any way that we can.
Great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to working with you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
2 weeks from today,
Thanks, Matt.
we have another we've got another guest coming for that session, but I'll follow up with you a little bit later. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, folks.
Good job, Bruce.
Very nice, thanks.
Thanks, Bruce.